Hello, this is a range of motion video for Jenny Rubchinsky. I'm over in the side here just reading the care plan about Shirley Brown, performing hand hygiene. I come up. I do not have robe or shoes as Miss Brown is bedridden, but I have done my own exercises to warm up for the range of motion exercises for Shirley Brown. I will start with talking with her, introducing myself, confirming who she is, and telling her that we will be practicing her range of motion exercises. Ask Shirley if she is comfortable and let her know that I'm just going to raise the bed for my own comfort. Good to hear you're feeling good today, Shirley. We'll start with your shoulder, where I will lift, holding her wrist and above her elbow for flexion and extension, and flexion and extension. These exercises usually are done 5 times each, but I will do them twice just for length of the video. Abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction. Abduction is away from the body, adduction is towards. An external rotation of the shoulder, an internal rotation of the shoulder. External, internal. Now I move down to the elbow where I do flexion, bending, extension. Flexion, extension. Supination, supination, pronation, supination, pronation. Moving down to the wrist, hyperextension, extension, flexion, hyperextension, extension, flexion. Ulnar flexion, moving to the inner wrist, radial flexion, as Mrs. Brown is very rigid in this movement. Thumb abduction, abduction in, adduction out, adduction in, abduction out. Then in the thumb, opposition to little finger is touching the thumb to the little finger, thumb to the little finger. Extension is in, extension is out, rather, flexion. Extension, flexion. Fingers is abduction, in, adduction, out. Abduction in, adduction out. Did I do flexion, making a fist, extension straight. Flexion, making a fist. And I would not push them down very far here to close completely, as Mrs. Brown's fingers are very rigid. Moving on to the hip, where I will do flexion and extension. As Mrs. Brown is staying in bed, there will be no hyperextension. So, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. Now, abduction, out, adduction, in, abduction, adduction. Internal rotation, in, external, out. Internal, external. Moving down the joints to her knee. Mrs. Brown, I'll just get you to bend your leg into flexion, straight, extension, flexion, I'm holding Mrs. Brown at her ankle and above her knee, ensuring you're supporting the joint at all times. Now moving down to the ankle, where we will do dorsiflexion, which is flexed, plantar flexion, which is pointed. Dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. Now, pronation. Oh, can you see this? Pronation, supination. Pronation, holding at the ankle, and supination. Now moving to the toes, flexion, straight, flexion rather bent. Mrs. Brown's toes, oh, they will bend there. Flexion, straight. Now abduction, away apart from each other, adduction. Abduction, adduction. This would complete the range of motion exercises for Shirley Brown. I would then ask if I could raise her bed to a seated position. What can I do to make you comfortable? Perfect, she's comfortable as she is. Lower the bed to the lowest position and put a call bell in Mrs. Brown's hands. That concludes the video of range of motion.